The airplane cabin hummed with the steady drone of engines as passengers settled into their seats. Sarah Chen pressed her sleeping newborn son, baby Michael, closer to her chest and glanced nervously at the empty seat beside her. At 28 years old, she had never felt more alone than she did at this moment, 30,000 feet above the ground with nothing but a single suitcase and $200 to her name. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the worn blanket around Michael. The fabric was thin and faded, but it was all she had left from the apartment she could no longer afford. 3 months ago, her world had been different. She'd had a job, a home, and dreams for her baby's future. Then the medical bills came, relentless and crushing, followed by the eviction notice. Now she was flying to her sister's house in Seattle, hoping for a fresh start. "Excuse me, niece." A deep voice interrupted her thoughts. Sarah looked up to find a tall man in an impeccably tailored navy suit standing in the aisle. He had kind eyes that crinkled at the corners, and he held the hand of a little girl with blonde pigtails who clutched a small bakery box decorated with a cheerful bunny logo. "This is our row," the man said gently. "You're in the middle seat, I believe?" "Oh, yes. I'm sorry." Sarah gathered her things carefully, trying not to wake Michael. The little girl, who couldn't have been more than 4 years old, climbed into the window seat and immediately pressed her nose against the glass. The man settled into the aisle seat, his presence somehow both commanding and comforting. He wore a white pocket square and gold cufflinks that caught the light, details Sarah noticed only because they seemed so far removed from her current reality. "I'm James Morrison," he said, extending his hand. "And this is my daughter, Emma." Sarah shook his hand briefly, aware of how rough her own palm must feel. "Sarah Chen." "Pretty baby," Emma announced suddenly, peering around her father to look at Michael. "What's his name?" "Michael," Sarah replied softly. "He's 3 months old." "I like babies," Emma declared. She opened her bakery box to reveal 4 chocolate chip cookies, each one perfectly round and studded with generous chunks of chocolate. "Daddy bought these at the airport. They're my favorite." James smiled at his daughter with obvious affection. "Emma has good taste in cookies." The plane began to taxi down the runway, and Sarah felt her anxiety spike. Michael stirred in her arms, his tiny face scrunching up in preparation for a cry. She bounced him gently, whispering soothing words, but his wails soon filled the cabin. Other passengers glanced their way, some with sympathy, others with barely concealed annoyance. "I'm so sorry," Sarah murmured, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. She tried everything, racking, hamming, checking his diaper, but Michael was inconsolable. "It's okay," James said calmly. "Babies cry. It's what they do." But Sarah could feel the weight of judgment from the people around them. She was the struggling single mother, the one who couldn't even calm her own child. Tears pricked at her eyes as she continued to bounce Michael, feeling more helpless with each passing second. Then something unexpected happened. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt and climbed onto her father's lap, stretching toward Sarah with one of her precious cookies extended in her small hand. "Here," she said simply. "Maybe the baby wants a cookie." "Emma, honey, the baby's too young for cookies," James explained gently. "Then it's for his mama," Emma insisted, her blue eyes serious and determined. She looked sad. "Cookies make people happy." Sarah's throat tightened. The simple kindness of this gesture from a child who barely knew her felt overwhelming. "Thank you, Emma," she managed to say. "That's very sweet of you." She took the cookie, and Emma beamed with pride before settling back into her seat. The sweetness of the chocolate melted on Sarah's tongue, and somehow, the small act of receiving this gift helped her breathe a little easier. Michael, as if sensing his mother's shift in emotion, began to quiet down. Over the next hour, an unlikely friendship formed. Emma chattered endlessly about her favorite things, her stuffed elephant named Peanut, her dance class, and how she was going to Seattle to visit her grandma. James occasionally interjected with gentle corrections or explanations, and Sarah found herself relaxing into the conversation. "Where's your husband?" Emma asked innocently, in the way only children can. "Emma," James said quickly, "that's a private question." It's okay, Sarah said softly. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Michael's daddy isn't with us anymore. It's just the two of us now. Emma considered this information with the gravity of a 4-year-old philosopher. That's sad, she finally said. Then her face brightened. But you have Michael. And we can be your friends on the airplane. Something about Emma's pure, uncomplicated view of the world made Sarah's heart ache in the best possible way. I would like that very much. As the flight continued, James began asking Sarah gentle questions about her plans in Seattle. She found herself opening up about her sister, about her hopes to find work, about how scared she was but also determined to build a better life for Michael. James listened with genuine interest, never once making her feel judged for her circumstances. I run a company in Seattle, James mentioned casually. Morris in Tech. We're always looking for good people. He pulled out a business card. If you need help finding work, send me your resume. No promises, but I can at least make sure it gets to the right people. Sarah stared at the embossed card, her hands shaking. Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me. James glanced at Emma, who was now dozing against the window, cookie crumbs on her dress. Because my daughter saw someone who needed kindness, and she didn't hesitate to share what she had. That's the kind of person I want her to be. The least I can do is follow her example. When the plane landed, Emma woke up and immediately looked worried. Are you leaving now? She asked Sarah, her bottom lip trembling slightly. Well, yes, sweetheart. The plane ride is over. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She thrust her bakery box toward Sarah. Inside were the 3 remaining cookies. If I share my cookies, will you stay? The question hung in the air, breaking Sarah's heart and healing it simultaneously. She knelt down to Emma's level, balancing Michael carefully. Oh, Emma, I have to go to my sister's house. But you know what? I'll keep your cookies safe, and every time I eat one, I'll remember the kind little girl who shared with me when I needed a friend. James cleared his throat, and Sarah noticed his eyes looked a bit shiny. What my daughter is trying to say, in her own way, is that we'd like to stay in touch. If that's okay with you. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in the lobby of Morris & Tech, wearing a borrowed interview suit and carrying a resume that James's assistant had helped her polish. The job wasn't guaranteed, but the interview was real. Michael was with her sister, safe and fed and loved. In her purse, wrapped carefully in a napkin, was the last of Emma's cookies. Sarah had saved it, a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures of kindness can change everything. A 4-year-old girl had seen past differences in circumstance and bank accounts, had seen only another person who needed comfort, and had shared what she had. That, Sarah thought as she walked toward the elevator, was the kind of world worth building, one cookie, one kindness, one connection at a time.